Hello everyone. Thank you for coming. I think I should probably start by saying that we are very grateful that you're here. There's some quite stiff competition up at the other end of the field in the form of George Eustace, but I think what this session serves as a reminder of is that change really happens from the ground up, not the top down. So I think I'd like to open by saying that if at any point you have a question or a comment or you want to just put your hand up, please do. We're not going to save questions to the end. This is all about how we can help to connect and build a new education system together. So, we're going to be talking about building relationships between farms and schools, which, if any of the sessions I've attended over the past 24 hours are to go by, is an incredibly vital piece of work. If we're going to grow the momentum that's all around us here, we need food, farming and education to work together, something that doesn't happen at policy level, but is happening in schools thanks to organisations and initiatives that these guys have. We have talked over the past 24 hours about removing barriers, removing the barriers in farming that are currently stopping young people getting involved, repairing the disconnect between what we eat and how it's grown and the lack of knowledge there is right from the early years ages of that. And there are loads of amazing food charities out there, farming charities that do great work, but the word that always springs to mind when I think about what Grow and Chefs in Schools and George at Greenside and all the team there are doing is fundamentally changing the fabric of the school and the way the food is served and how kids learn about it. This isn't a once-off trip to a farm. It's not chefs coming in to teach kids how to make soup once a year. This is changing every meal, every day, changing the fabric of the school, the way the structure is built so that kids can get their hands dirty right from nursery upwards. So, three amazing women, three amazing initiatives. George at Greenside, Deputy Head of Greenside Primary School in West London, where they have built an experiential learning model that has expanded the curriculum from label a plant with root, stem and leaf to let's do soil analysis in the playground. And really is equipping kids with the curiosity and the respect for nature, community and food that is standing them to just be absolutely sort of the kids that we need in the future to drive real change. Nicole, who is the co-founder and executive chef of Chefs in Schools, which is an amazing charity that is transforming school food culture and education on a school-by-school basis. And Sarah Alun-Jones, who is the farm and outdoor learning manager of an organisation called Grow, based at Totteridge Academy in North London. So that's a very, very brief introduction to who they all are. What we want you to go away with from this session is practical tools and knowledge of how you guys can enact some of the change that they are doing. So the way we're going to start is by maybe with Sarah talking about how the Grow model works.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Clementine. So Grow is it's a farm. We have 6 acres in Barnet in North London, so we're actually the very first field of the green belt. And we run, part of what we do is we run as a fully functioning working farm. So we run a box scheme, we sell to restaurants and florists, and we have lots of training and community volunteering opportunities. And then the other part of what we do is education. So the land of the farm is actually owned by a secondary school. It's a 6-acre site that they didn't know what to do with before we got there, and we asked them if we can start a farm, and they said yes. So we work with primary all the way up to year 13s. We do a variety of different sessions, from sort of drop-down sessions with year 6s and 7s, where they come out for 10 to 12 weeks and spend time on the farm. We do lots of stuff around sort of well-being and mindfulness, but they also are learning how to grow food. So they really are part of the farm. We also have school trips, we have teacher training, we have trainees, we have year 11s who are at risk of falling out of school come out with us for 2 hours a week. So it's really that we are a part of the school, that the children all see us as staff, and we're kind of trying to create this model where the farm is available to the school to use for education opportunities, so subjects can come out and learn with us as well. And we've been going for 3.5 years, and it's been it's been a ride. it's been really successful. Lots of people are really keen on what we're doing, and we work with other schools as well. We have a training program to help other schools that might be interested in doing a similar thing to set up. And we really believe that this model is something that can work in lots of different settings. There are lots of schools across the country that have space, and there's also lots of gaps in the curriculum that a charity like Grow has been able to fill. And we've been really, really popular with the school community and with teachers as well. We're kind of trying to create this kind of blueprint that other people can replicate in their own communities.
Thank you. I think what's quite interesting is that we've got 3 different kind of scales of model here. So we've got a 200 kid primary school, 225, primary school. We've got a very big secondary school with...
Yeah, we've got about 800 students.
With your own farm. And then we've got a nationwide now charity. So it's possible at all sizes. So I think we'll go from the kind of the medium back down to the small, and then we'll go up to the big.
So my school is very small. We're right in the middle of central London. We're very, very urban setting, very diverse range of students in our school. And we're just like a normal school. Like, just when you go in through the door, you think just a normal school, teaching kids every day. But I think we've tried to really think and reimagine how you can teach children, because one thing that we all have to do is feed ourselves every day, 3 times a day for the rest of your life. So you might not necessarily revert to what you've learned in your maths lessons at school, but you will have to make effective choices about how you feed yourself and what's good for you and the planet. And we've tried to normalize those attitudes at our school from a very early stage. And we've tried to adapt the national curriculum to suit the kind of knowledge that we believe that the children should be having. So we still teach the national curriculum. We're not alternative in that way. But what we've done is taken, say, like the science strands of the national curriculum that cover plant growing, and we've just blown that up so that it covers soil health, it covers the food system. We've taught through geography, how you can teach the food system through geography. We teach about wheat growing. We teach about like regenerative systems. So we've tried our best to cover really important knowledge through a very small model.
I think what's really interesting about what, in particular with Greenside, is that there's no extra funding. You haven't got a lot of space. You've got a small concrete playground. You've got a tiny little market garden that's the size of this stage. And again, what you're doing is working on the existing framework. You've just expanded it. So it's something that any school can do. Yeah,
I mean, we don't have space and we certainly don't have money. But I think that's what we're doing, is showing that those things aren't a barrier to providing the knowledge to this kind of thing. And we've sown a wheat field. When I say field, just is about that big, but it's still a field, and it's on the street in the middle of London, so it's not tucked away in the back of the school. It's right there. There's the houses, road, pavement, wheat field, kitchen, and that's like, for us, it's a big statement to show that just you can have wheat in the middle of London. But you can also use it. It's there as a message to show that this is where food comes from. This is how food can be grown, and we've done it in strips as well. So we've kind of got a herbal lay in the middle of London. We've got vetches and clovers and all in amongst our wheat. And we opened a bakery in January this year, so that we are teaching our kids how to cook and how to make bread. So we're showing the whole process from start to finish. So we're showing where this is the wheat. The same wheat is in the flour that's in the bread. Sort of eat, wheat, repeat kind of thing. But it's been really, really amazing to see how everyone has engaged with what we're doing. And so the knowledge has gone right out onto the street, so everyone can be part of the community, really.
And with the bread, for example, again, you might think, oh, they opened a bakery, they must have loads of time on their hands. What primary school can do that? But it starts with caretaker?
Yeah, so the caretaker reminds the cleaner to put the bread oven on in the morning, and then the teaching assistants that come to breakfast club will bake the bread from the day before, and then they'll mix up the dough, and then later on the kitchen team will shape the bread, and then I will feed the starter, or if I forget, then the site manager now can do it over FaceTime. So it's kind of a real community process, and that's how we've managed to make it work. By having everybody part of it, because these things don't work if only one person does it. It has to be everybody. The whole vision has to be sold on that. And I think that it's not just the team that make the bread, all the children make the bread as well, because that's something that we found to be absolutely crucial in all of this, is to create learning experiences that are purposeful. So we do not have standalone cooking lessons. We don't have, like, at 10 o'clock on Tuesday, year 3, learn to make soup. We use food and nature as a way into learning. So, for example, we will have a class cook the school lunch, and they will go to the market with money, real money, and buy what they need. They buy the ingredients, bring it back to school, and then work out their change. So that's their maths learning. They'll weigh the ingredients out, work out how much they need to scale it up to feed 225 people. So that's like real maths learning. It makes sense to them. It's got a real world context to it. And then as they're doing the cooking, they'll write down the ingredients that they're using, how much salt have they put on it, how much pepper, and then they'll use that as their writing task. So then they'll write the instructions, so that then they've still written, that's part of the national curriculum. They've done maths learning as part of the national curriculum, but what they've done is set themselves up with something for life.
And Nicole, you're the kind of master of infiltrating existing systems, in that, schools all have canteens, they all have kitchens, but most of them are run by contract caterers. So you just broke it and did it differently, and it works.
I'd like to think we didn't break it. No? We run it. Well, we run a charity called Chefs in Schools. We work with 58 schools currently. A few outside of London, and we've just recently started to work with an academy trust in Sheffield called Australia Academy, and I guess it's being part of the conversation that's really important, and that's happening. So we help schools. We don't actually go in and change things, but we help schools put food on as the heart of the school, really, which is like what Georgina has done. So I think each model is really different. So the 58 schools, not one school actually resembles the other. We work with 10 secondary schools and 10 SEN schools as well. And it's making sure that the education is linked to what the kids eat in the dining hall and to what they grow on the school premises as well. So it's really important to make sure that the kids are holistically learning about food, and it mirrors what the teams are cooking in the kitchen. We do a lot of training programs as well, so we go in and we train the kitchen teams on how to cook everything from scratch. So like Greenside, they're making bread. They're also, making sure that they get enough fruit and vegetables in the day. And what's amazing is that chefs from, 7 o'clock in the morning are making sure that the kids are getting a really good, nutritious meal. So
I think you were just saying about adapting to each different school's needs and size and, dietary requirements and everything. Grow, that's a brilliant model where you've adapted it in different situations. I mean, all of you, but if you can talk a little bit more about how someone can look at it, their school or their nursery or whatever, and think, how can I start to build this model?
Yeah, so we actually have used, we call ourselves an agroecological farm. So we've kind of used that frame of reference to kind of inform a lot of what we're doing. So if you don't know, agroecology sits within sort of organic regenerative farming, but it's kind of using scientific techniques to improve soil health and do things organically, but also putting a real emphasis on education, co-collaboration, community, and also kind of, I heard someone explain it once as farming beyond the farm gate. So it's kind of getting people to understand how everything is connected and how everything you do has an impact. And we find that a great way to farm and a great way to include people, and it means that it's a kind of framework that you can take anywhere. So yeah, we use that a lot. And then we also, I guess we're just quite adaptable. Same as what George was saying, our kind of curriculum that we have is very much dependent on the needs of the farm. So, you know, we'll have young people wood chipping beds or tending to the bees, looking after the chickens, sowing in spring, doing just anything that needs to be done on the farm. And through that, just connecting them to the natural world and the flow of the seasons and all these things that I think are really easy to take for granted that people are used to. And even things like, you know, we had a student this year who didn't know that the time changed, didn't know there were time zones because it automatically updated on his iPhone. And like, I think it's really important to remember where a lot of young people are coming from and that it's quite far away from where we might be. So yeah, that's kind of the approach we take.
We were talking earlier about the fact that, you know, all three of these organisations are based in cities, and you know, we're at basically a farming conference. What you guys are not aiming to do is build a new generation of farmers necessarily. You're not agricultural colleges. You're not, you know, that's not what you're doing. But you're just trying to connect what happens on their plate to what happens in the supermarket when they then go out and make choices. You're giving them the skills to make informed choices, right? But choices, perhaps, is another way of saying it. But I think that's what's so important, and the way tying it to from the curriculum right into the food, right into the playground is vital. And what have you kind of seen as the outcomes of this? Like, what's happened outside of the classroom or the kitchen that has really sort of made you think this is working?
Yeah, well, I guess for us now is seeing how important it is to normalise it. If everybody does it and you make it a seamless part of the curriculum, then the knowledge just sort of sits implicitly. Because I think we've been cooking our own food in the kitchen now for about 6 years, and we had a moment this year where we realised that every child in the school who eats with us, we don't have any packed lunches, so everybody eats our school lunch, that all of them have been eating that lunch without questioning it since their whole school experience. They don't remember a time when we didn't do that. So I think that was a real moment for us to see how, like, actually they maybe don't know why we're doing this because they just accept it as part of what we do. But I think that but we can see that they now are taking that out with them when they leave us, and not just to leave to another school, but they're affecting their relationships with food with their families at home too. So we're now having a lot more interaction with families, and at the beginning there was definitely sort of uncertainty about what it was we were doing, but now families want to be part of what we're doing. And I think that we've been able to break down a lot of the barriers and concerns by inviting people in so that they can see. And I think now, as those children move through into secondary school and into adulthood, that they've got that knowledge that they can draw on when they need to. They don't necessarily have to live and breathe it every day, but they will have that access to information.
And most of our schools, so we would go into schools originally and we would make sure that we change what they eat. Well, we look at the menu and start making everything from scratch. And then there came a point where we started to realize that actually it was the education that needed to be happening before we actually looked at the menu. And that education could be anything. You know, it could be a child asking for something when they come and serve, when they come with their plate and you're serving them, and you could say something as simple as, you know, try a little bit of peas. Or we're talking about seasonality, which is, you know, one of the most important things that we learn as human beings, to eat with the seasons, because one, it's better for our bodies, and two, as costs go up, we're going to have to start, you know, being more aware of what the land around us is supplying. But we said, you know, directly, we're teaching kids seasonality when we're ordering correctly, and we're ordering with, you know, the knowledge that we can turn a lentil into, you know, a feast. So that automatically is being part of the knowledge without it being taught. So we say the dining hall is a classroom, and this is fundamentally, I think, where we started to see change, where we weren't saying, you know, this is what you had to eat. It just became part of the school ethos. You eat it or you don't, as long as you don't leave the dining hall hungry. It's not forced on you, but you will grow wheat outside your school kitchen window. And, you know, a school recently started, they have a Koji lab, and they started doing miso with the children. And, you know, this is not even a question. I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, well, why not? You know, so it is actually how you start seeing change, is by just making it part of what the school does. Eventually, we were saying it would just be the norm at Greenside for kids to be testing the soil.
I think,
wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think kids see things very black and white. So if you present something with integrity and fun, that they'll take it on. And like the soil project that we started in September, because we'd been cooking our own food and we wanted to open a bakery, and we wanted to give them more knowledge. And so we started the regenerative soil project in September, where each class takes responsibility for the school garden for one half term, and they use all that as their science lessons. So we baselined the soil, we tested it, and then, I mean, we didn't really know what we're doing, still don't, but it's been a massive learning curve. Like, I read Albert Howard and thought that sounds like a good idea, so let's do it. So we then tested the soil and get the kids out every half term, one different group from nursery and reception all the way through to year 6. So they will look at water infiltration. They look at they'll do a slake test, which was new learning for me. They look at they count worms, they smell soil, they touch it. And it's like when they're allowed to experience that, and when they see that you can grow food without having to use chemicals or anything artificial, and then just say, why isn't everyone doing that? Let's tell all the presidents, is what one of them said. Tell all the presidents to just do what we do, and then everything's fine, right? Well, that's another story.
For anyone who's been here for the past couple of days, so George Monbiot yesterday was saying, you know, geopolitical shocks and climate shocks, those are linked. There's a terrible symbiotic relationship between the two of them. This morning there was a conversation about how big business can be involved in regenerative agriculture, talking about seasonality, the demand. We can't continue to demand grapes from around the world in January because there might come a point where they're not available. And so what you were saying, Nicole, about like dining rooms being classrooms, if we don't put grapes on the table until September when the grapes are purple, then that is a learning lesson for life. Kids then go into a shop and think, well, what did I eat in school today? What do I want to buy? And even more strongly when you have your farm there. Yeah,
and I think it's also, it's important to say as well that it's quite a lot of people will say like, oh, we don't learn, like you don't learn these things at school, like nobody's teaching these things. But actually there is a module, like they do learn about seasonality. So we have all year 7s come out to the farm 3 times a year when they do a seasonality lesson. And we go around, we do a farm tour with them, and we pick what is in season. And then we have a kind of quite impromptu conversation with the kids where they'll say like, oh, and what about oranges, miss? And you say like, well, where do you think they come from? And you start to see the cogs turning, and then they go back and then they cook up, it's normally a risotto with all the bits and bobs that we have, and they eat it. And the teachers have said that since they've been coming out to the farm, like 80-90% of the kids will try it, whereas before it was 20-30. And yeah, I think there is, like you were saying, there is actually a lot of this in the national curriculum. There's in food tech, there's a module on sustainable agriculture, but it's just that a lot of teachers don't know what to do with that. And yeah, we're just bringing it to life. And I think another really important thing is, which feeds into a lot of what you were saying, is a lot of the feedback that we get from our young people is that they love that we're giving them responsibility. And I think that is quite often something that can feel like it's taken away from kids in the education system and taken away from teachers. Not, it's just, the system is what it is. And there's not a lot of free time. There's, it's stuck. And what we're kind of offering is to be like the soft edges around the outside, and kids love that they can come out and we'll say, you're doing this task, you're in charge of weeding that bed and composting it, and they get a real sense of achievement at the end of it. And it's because it's linked to real life stuff. And we always say to them, this is your farm, you're part of it. And if they want to suggest something that we want to grow or whatever, we'll take that into account. And I think that's kind of what we need to be doing more of.
I think also what's really important is that there's so much change happening in schools and around food and food education. But I think the greatest lesson I learned, so I spent all my life working in kitchens, and whenever I get asked how long is something going to take, the longest amount of time would be 8 minutes. So I spent my life thinking 8 minutes, that is exactly, it's the answer to everything. And then starting to work in a school and seeing change from year one to happen, the change slowly, incrementally in a child in year 6. And I'm really lucky. I go to schools and kids come up to me and go like, oh my God, have you tasted the runner beans? And I'm like, to go from, a school that doesn't have food as part of the conversation to kids being excited about runner beans, or have you tasted the leaves in the garden? Like, just bouncing with excitement because they want to eat all the leaves. And I think this is amazing and it's happening. And, most schools now are doing so much around food. That it's just really nice to be part of this change that's happening. And I don't know if there are any questions. I guess, our main, the outcome from this talk is for you guys to go and, see how in some way you can implement anything that, we're saying. So if there are any questions that you have for us or anything that...
So I have a question which is about obstacles and challenges, and for all of you.
Just kidding.
But just particularly for Georgina, because it's not the case that food is part of the conversation in every school, and I've been quite shocked by my son's infant school. And I just want to know what the main obstacles are. If people want this to happen in their local school, who needs to embrace it? How do you make it happen?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, as a school, to think that you would not accept substandard in maths lesson. There's no way. You couldn't get away with poor maths teaching, and you wouldn't get away with poor reading results, for example. So why are we prepared to accept second best when it comes to lunchtime? And the lunch hour is quite a significant portion of the school day. So why is it that schools will accept shutting the door on that and say, that's someone else's responsibility, that's down to corporate caterer, we don't need to worry about that? Well, actually, it's missing a trick, because by bringing the catering in-house, then you make it, as Nicole said, you make it another classroom. So the real barriers are cost and attitude. If you want to make the change, if you want to do something different, something big, you have to think differently rather than just acting differently. You have to think and be committed to the thought first, because that's where we started, by being committed to the idea and actually had zero clue what it entailed. So we just ripped off the Band-Aid and did it. And via a series of happy accidents, we've got to where we are today, and everyone is doing it. But so cost is a huge obstacle, because there is no funding for school lunch, as I'm sure my colleagues here will back me up. There's no funding for it, and most people don't realise that when a child pays their school lunch money, that a school has to pay the staff in the kitchen from that money too. So we charge £2.20 a head. We don't want to overcharge, because then people will say they can't afford to have it. So we're trying to keep it manageable. But within that, you've got to pay staff as well as buy the food and service the equipment. So I'm plan B when the cook is off. I'm the cook. I'm also the deputy head of the school. So, it's a case of you've got to be willing to do it. But we've made it work because we've made it part of the school learning. So because it's the heart of the vision. A class can go and learn how to make lunch. You can go down to the kitchen and make bread as part of your learning. That therefore it keep going, because it's something that everyone's talking about all the time, and it's become an integral part of the school. So cost and attitude, the two things.
and if I can add, I mean, I'd add persistence as well. And if you're persisting as a parent, or persisting as the school, as the team, or persisting, you know, as a governor, however, I think, so me and Georgina met, I think about 8 years ago. So, and we joke that, you know, it's never easy, and there's always going to be obstacles. It's either the parents, there's a financial cost, but if you believe in something and believe in the importance of it, you just have to continue making sure that you get to where you want to be. With schools, we always ask them to write their school food vision. So give us the vision, write it with the team, write it with the children. Tell us how you see your school in 5 years' time, with using food as the landscape, and then we help them deliver that. But, you know, that when you look at things as like when a lot of parents come to me and say, Nicole, what can I do? I say, if you're going to go up to the head teacher, show that there's a problem, but also give them a solution as well, because everyone's always so busy in the school environment. So if you say, I think we could be doing this better, and these are the 3 things that you need to do it better, and most of the time, a lot of the time, it's successful.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that as well. I think, understanding for us, because we're based at the school, but we are a separate organisation. So that was quite a learning curve for us to kind of get into the mindset of school and teachers. And I think that's actually how we've been able to do so much, is that we are part of the school, and we really have this insight now into how a school runs, which you guys do as well, that not all organisations do have. And sort of understanding that often the teachers can be, no offence, George, as as institutionalised as the kids, and they're having to follow this rigid structure as well. So getting into step with that structure and getting in the way of them, basically, is kind of what we tried to do. So we went into briefings in the morning to they do thought for the day, but we did thought for the day was just always about the farm, and just getting into their routine so that they see you. Because even, you know, our school it's a big secondary school with a car park. The school entrance is there, and you go to the farm there. And for the first year, I think about 50% of the teachers had never stepped foot on the farm, because it just doesn't enter into their heads. They're busy, they want to get home, they've got families. So understanding that to start with. And also, I think also like finding a champion is really good. So like you need somebody that believes in it, and then kind of get in with them. And, you know, if you can convince them and make friends with them, then they will, you know, spread the word, like that agroecological mind frame. And also something that we've been working on quite a lot with the business manager, who is often the person that makes a lot of these decisions, is conversation around carbon targets, which all schools now have. So our school is part of an academy trust, and they have, I think it's net zero 2040 or 2050 targets. And often the business managers, you know, they're super busy, stressed. Often they're teaching as well. They've got no idea about carbon targets. So we've been kind of pushing them to use food procurement, to use, you know, all the things that farm growing can provide. And then for them, it's speaking their language, because then it's cost saving and things like that. So, yeah, just thinking and reframing it, basically, and thinking like them.
I think the only thing, you guys are the experts, what I can add to that is that you need to be willing to ask for help as well. I think like that's something keeps coming up in conversations here. You can't do anything alone, and obviously that's a bit of a stating the obvious, but people are willing to help, especially kids. You know, they're quite who doesn't want to help kids? And even just in terms of, you had a dad who came in and built a greenhouse that he got off Gumtree in the for free in the garden. And George spoke at an event we did back in November, and you happened to mention that you can't serve soup and crumble on the same day because you only had 200 bowls, or exactly. And then someone who worked for a restaurant who had loads of bowls left over just brought them to the school the next day. Like, people have the means to help, and I think just knowing what your needs are and putting them out to your community is such a massive stepping stone.
So we built in lockdown. There was out of all the things that we decided to do to make sure we kept busy, we built on the school premises property managers normally have a house, but with the new renting laws, they're not able, if you're a new property manager, you're not able to live on the school site. So schools have this house that is normally empty. So we decided to turn it into, well, we called it the Hackney School of Food, but we wanted to create a space where kids just went and learnt about food. And it got built by volunteers in lockdown. So the whole premises is beautiful. And now the kids from neighbouring schools, they have chickens. It's exactly like what Georgina does. It's where, you know, they come, they learn about the soil, they're growing wheat. And I think it was done by the community, and it now belongs to the community. So once again, like Clem is saying, I think things that sort of asking for help and also opening up to the community. For us, when a lot of parents say, what are you feeding my child at school? We say, come and eat. Don't even tell us what day you're going to come, because we want to open the doors to show what we're giving the kids to eat, and also just to make sure that everybody comes along the journey with the school. So yeah, I just wanted to add that we actually built an amazing Hackney School of Food with just volunteers and asking people for help. So that was basically...
And the role of kind of businesses as well in helping schools. So I didn't actually introduce myself. So Clementine and I work for a company called Natura, which is a fruit and vegetable wholesaler. We supply lots of restaurants. We buy at scale. So therefore we can sell to George and chefs in schools at a much lower cost, because we can offset that cost with restaurants who can pay a bit more. And the same for Wild Farmed, who give you your flour. It's £1 a kilo, which is, again, obviously they wouldn't use that cost for another customer, but for you, for the purpose that you're doing it with, of course they are going to do that. So just knocking on doors and saying, we had an open day at Greenside last week where a school that is also a chefs in school, and they needed funding for some new equipment. They are based in Poplar, so the head teacher of the school just went to the banks in Canary Wharf, literally walked into reception and said, would any of you like to donate some money for my school to have some new kitchen equipment? And they said yes. So, you know, just having the confidence to walk in and say, can you help me? Yes or no, either answer is fine.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's just ask. We've had so much community help. We have volunteers every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that without them we couldn't really run the farm. And also, like, I do think that all of this stuff that we're talking about is quite fashionable at the minute. So there are lots of private companies wanting to essentially greenwash, and you can use that to your advantage. You know, if they can say like, oh, we gave this to a community farming project at a state school, then companies like that. We had a request the other day from Stella McCartney to do their fashion shoot on our farm. So we were like, how much can we charge them? Because they could, you know, they can pay. So people want to be part of it. It's, you know, it's cool now. So I think we can use that to our advantage.
Yeah, and I would say, aside from big business, farms and farmers and farming has been extremely helpful to us, because what do I know about farming from a primary school in the middle of London? So I read a few books, but then like asking for help from farmers has been really, really great. So now we've got a relationship with them where we can FaceTime them from the field. The kids really enjoy that opportunity to FaceTime with a farmer and just like to see that it blows their minds that what we're doing is the same as what farmers are doing. Because I think that concept of sort of realizing what goes on outside in the real world is still quite difficult for children, because their vision is quite into it's just what they see in front of them. But then to be able to see that what we're doing is done at scale, that's really powerful as well. To get help from a farmer has been really great, so that our kids can now say to one of them asked the farmer, how much nitrogen have you fixed today? And so, I mean, just the fact that a 5-year-old could ask that question and knows what they mean So how many nodules have you got on your legumes this week, Farmer Tim?
I went into the nursery class at Greenside last week to get some milk from their fridge, and the children were sitting learning about different soil types and what you would grow in different soils. And they're 4. I don't know that now, and I'm older than that. And but it's so relevant. You might think, well, why teach a 4-year-old what clay soil is for and what you can grow in loam? But the nursery teacher was saying, what would you grow in here? It's got lots of nutrients in. What's a nutrient? And the child said, oh, is it like a vitamin? And said, oh, well, why would you want to grow something in a ground that has lots of vitamins in? Oh, so maybe we can eat it. And you just, those are connections that connect what is happening in the classroom to what's happening in the dining room to then questions they'll be wanting to answer later on. They might come to Groundswell in 20 years' time. That's what we want.
But what they will do is be living on this planet for the rest of their lives. And it's important that they know that information now. Because I'm speaking for myself here, but I'm sure we speak for other people that we've had to come to this knowledge about how to respect the planet and respect the food system and how we provide that for ourselves. So we've all had to come to that now. Imagine if you didn't have to come to that, if you always knew it. If you began your life knowing that information, what a difference that will make to the planet. Because we don't have the time to wait for the people who are 4 now to figure it out when they're 40. They need to figure it out now because they're going to steward the planet into the future. So I was on the verge of driving myself crazy thinking, how am I going to fix the planet? I can't do that by myself. I can't do everything, but what I can do is fix one thing. So I think as an educator, if I plow my energy into getting kids to think this way, and that we can show that there is hope because it's important. We have to have it.
And just to add, I think Georgina said, like, the only 2 things that we have to do daily is breathe and eat. But we were recently rewriting our mission statement, and we said, food is a universal language that connects us all. And that's what we try and create in the dining hall. A lot of our schools, after we've worked with the school for a few years, they say that, we only want your child to have a school lunch because it's the only time that it unifies the whole school. So most of our schools don't allow children to come in with packed lunches, but we also don't present it as we're taking away something. We're saying this is a time in the day where we can take care of your children through food as well. And I think, it's true. It's a language that we all understand. So, I mean, obviously, I've been a chef all my life. It's the only language I know. But, it's connections as well that you can make with people.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add from what both of you said, that I think what you were saying, George, particularly, like, presenting it as it's positive and it's a solution. Like, that can, like, we're doing things that young people, not just young people, but also adult volunteers, families, get on board with this, and you're doing the right thing. We talk about that with our box scheme, that most of the customers for our box scheme are the parents of children at the school. And, if you join a box scheme, then, you're getting local food, you're getting nutrient-dense food, you're supporting farmers' wages, tick, tick, tick. And we talk about that a lot, of just, like, kind of making a party that people want to come to. And, if you're bringing kids out of school onto the farm, that's kind of an easy win. But just, focusing on the positives, and even when obstacles will come up, there's so many positives, for the wider, like, we should be doing this for the planet, but also there are loads of ways that you can talk in schools' languages to find positives as well. And just do it. You've just got to do it. I think.
Persist, do it. We'll
take this lady's question.
Thanks. What you're all doing is absolutely amazing, and it's what should be happening all over the country. I've got 2 questions. One, is it possible to use the students as ambassadors to particularly the secondary school students? Because they're the ones that always seem to sell things, and they're the ones that are going to go forward. And the other question was, is there a system for linking up with farms around the country? Because we have a small farm, and I would love to link with schools. I mean, I can link with local schools, but you know, the inner city schools don't have the. So it would just be interesting to know if there is a way that that can be done.
Yeah, thank you. Through what we've been doing, we've realised that more and more it's about context. So for schools to be able to do things like we're doing, you don't have to do everything. But you can take little bits of things and do them. So like there might be a farmer who can help you with this, or there might be a cheese person who can help you with that. And I think that's what the way that schools can continue to develop this. And I've begun to put together a platform for doing just that, for connecting farmers and growers and producers with schools. So it's not like a series of curriculum resources, but it's a knowledge sharing, so that if there's a school that wants to teach about soil, they can get this person to help them. Or if you want to learn how to make bread, this person can help you. So yeah, that's work in progress at the moment. The more I say it, the more I'll force myself to have to follow through and finish it. But yeah, that's exactly what I feel needs to happen. Schools need to be able to access like-minded people who can help them bring projects to life for them. And I'm sure there are lots of people who are willing to do it but don't know how to access that. So that's what I'm working on now. It's called the Soil Yard.
I'm just going to put a tiny little advert for something that I came across yesterday, which is an organisation called Farmer Time, which is basically doing what George does already, which is a school, every class gets matched with a farmer, and you do a video call once a week, and you just literally say, this is what I'm doing. I'm lambing this week, or other examples of farming activities. And it's a really nice day, week on week, one farmer, one class, and you go through the whole year. So that's Farmer Time. I learned about that yesterday. And then ambassadors, I guess, Sarah, you're...
Yeah, so also about the schools and farms link. So there is also an amazing organisation called the Country's Trust. That's what they do. They've actually been going since like the 70s, and they link up schools and farms, and they get... visits basically to farms, so they're definitely worth checking out. We also run a training program because part of what we're in, we're a small team with a small farm, but we want to be able to like share what we're doing with lots of other people. So we run a funded training program. We do it in early spring and winter about kind of how to take this to your setting. So it's kind of the idea, it's half directed at kind of people within the school setting, so teachers or maybe outdoor facilitators, and then also at the other end of the spectrum, more like growers and farmers. And what through it's like a 4-day course, and we're kind of trying to make this kind of hybrid space in between, basically. So we go through like how to have growing spaces that are suitable for teaching and young people, a growing plan that is feasible for primary or secondary, or that can fit into a school curriculum. But yeah, we'd love to have more farms involved in that. So that you can get in touch with us about that if you fancy coming to Barnet. And the ambassadors. So yeah, we're big on ambassadors. So we have, because we work with kind of year 3 right up to year 13. So we always, when we have our primary groups come to the farm, we try as much as possible to have an older student who's been through our programs, who might be in year 9, to come on as a helper. We recently had on for Farm Open Sunday, we had one of our students, Neo, who's been feeding the chickens every Wednesday for 3.5 years, and he was doing chicken tours to the adults. And we had 3 of our other students who've been in various programs just doing tours of the farm. And it was just that, I think also when you work in sort of teaching, when you can see a student teaching another student, that's when you know that they've really learnt it. And it's really just heartwarming to see that happening and them passing it on in their own words. And it's also helpful for the school community to have the kind of older, cooler year 9s, year 10s knowing about the farm, having more responsibility because they're older, and that gets the younger ones involved and excited even more. And they're also a bit more responsible, so they can do more work for you.
What was really interesting as well about the Farmer Time and the connection that you had have with a farm now is what we've been talking about tying it back to what is already on the curriculum and not overloading teachers who are already underfunded, overworked, all of the above. And Tom, the farmer yesterday, was saying, every week I just say, what are you doing in class today? Okay, you're doing genetics. Great, I can talk about seeds and my, sheep and different things. And so it's expanding that knowledge from the very basic, what do we have to tick off on the curriculum sheet, to what is relevant to a farmer. So you obviously have so much knowledge that is so relevant to everything that we're learning.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I do at Grow, actually. So I go, the head of science sends me the curriculum for every year, and I just write this big document of so we did a lesson on seed dispersal the other day, and they were hunting for groundswell, dandelions, popping vetch, etc., to have all the different seed dispersals. And the teacher said that they, all kept it in their heads for so much longer because they'd seen it and felt it and smelt it. And there is actually so much that you can do with a national curriculum, and if you have knowledge of farming and natural systems, you can really put that to use, and not just in science. It can be, we have literacy lessons on the farm where they do a nature bug hunt, and then they write a piece of writing from the point of view of a pollinator. And we have art out there, we've had history out there. Geography obviously is an easy one, but also history. There's so much food in history. Food is in everything. Food is literally in every subject because it is everything. So yeah, and again, we always take the approach of not expecting teachers to go out their way to write a special lesson on seed dispersal, because or something that they can't be expected to know as a year 7 science teacher, but just us offering our more expert opinion so that they can focus on the teaching. We can share with them knowledge about the natural world, and together we can just make it come alive.
There's another question here. Lovely, thank you.
Hi, I'm from a charity that does a similar thing, but we have children visit our farms, which are UK wide. As a relatively sort of big charity, I guess, in the sector, I'm wondering where you're going for your gaps in your knowledge, or what forums there are for people who are thinking about doing something similar, or even, we work with hundreds of schools and academy chains and things like that, where we can sort of pool resources to make it so that this is the norm, so that we can broaden our impact to all of the schools that everybody's working with, to kind of accelerate this as the normal.
Well, I think that there are people doing lots of different things out there, and what we need more than anything is a central place for where all this knowledge comes together. And I think that's what is definitely clear that is needed, because rather than lots of different people working in isolation, if everyone works together, then it will become the norm.
So I think in lockdown, a lot of charities working in schools came together, and that coming out of lockdown, we've wanted to keep that. So guys in St. Thomas at the moment are funding a business managers toolkit, because business managers end up having to run a restaurant in a school, but not coming with any knowledge. It's not taught to a business manager. But then from our point of view, we said, why don't we do a school food toolkit? Or, it's an alliance for head teachers, for business managers, for farmers, for chefs. But obviously, this is on the list of 100,000,001 things. But it is a conversation. There is funding for it. It is happening. And I think the beauty of coming out of lockdown was realizing that we're all doing and talking the same thing. Why don't we get together? Because that's how it's going to actually be achievable, is if we work together more. It's just now finding the time to actually know what's needed and doing it. But I hope that answered your question.
I think. I would love there to be a kind of an alliance of all the organisations that are doing great things, and create like a kind of national map of, are you from? I thought so. Hi. So yeah, like whether you do, residential, in-house school, and we can link up. We've been speaking actually to Place to Be, the people. So Place to Be is the in-house sort of school counsellors in state schools that are funded quite well, so that there's school counsellors available. And we've been talking about linking up with them more, so that instead of it being the teacher who kind of deals with all the kids that are struggling or SEN kids, and sometimes what we have in our school is they'll get 6 weeks of place to be, at the same time they're getting 12 weeks of grow, and then they're getting 6 weeks of equine therapy, so they're out of lessons for 4 hours a week for 12 weeks, and then they've got nothing the rest of the year. And if we can coordinate a bit more, we can make a bit more of a, they can be supported for longer. And I think that doing that in terms of different providers would be really great. So I quite often talk about like these kind of like 3 models for how schools and farms can work together. So the first is what George is doing, which is like in-house in school, which relies kind of on amazing teams and dedication and like is difficult in reality to do in a lot of schools. Then you've got like our model, which is a kind of we're a separate charity, but we have a partnership agreement with the school, so we've got far more time to give to it. We manage the funding ourselves, and we then offer the services to the children. And then for all the schools that don't have anybody who's interested in doing it, or a spare 6-acre field, then you create like a network of schools and farms that work together, and then you can have like a kind of local hub of hopefully sustainable producers that you can work with. Do maybe you could do your equine therapy there, or they could you could get funding to do supported sessions for children with needs, or kids that are at risk of falling out of school, and then they come to Jamie's farm once a year. That would be great. Let's do it.
I think we've got time for 2 more questions. One.
Hi there. Joe Mitchell. I'm a farmer in East Norfolk. I just want to speak from a farming point of view, and I host, in collaboration with the Country Trust, school visits on the farm. I think tomorrow is going to be number 12 for this year, so about 350 kids so far. More to come in the autumn, I think. Actually, from a farming point of view, seeing the children come onto the farm, and the kids I'm dealing with have never virtually stepped foot on a grass field. Absolutely transformative for them, and it's if you've never done it before, having kids on the farm is brilliant. Hay fever this year has been a nightmare, especially when children who never had hay fever before, starts off with a little sniffle, and then end of the day they can't see. It's quite anyway. But you mentioned the SEN children. You can be told that we've got some kids who will probably struggle for a day. By the end of the day, they're actually the best, because they're asking the right questions. They're not doing the whole maths and sums and all that sort of thing. It's practical. We're getting our hands dirty, digging the worms, counting worms. What have we got in there? And actually running our hands through the wheat and all sorts. It's brilliant, and I really recommend that any school try and get onto a farm. I know coach travel is the biggest bugbear and risk assessments and all sorts, but there we go. But the question I really have is, I got asked the other day to deal with climate change. How do you deal with, or how do you use food in your climate change discussions?
So the national curriculum at primary level doesn't really cover it. There's one mention of it in year 4 when it talks about the water cycle. So we have brought that knowledge into teaching it through all sorts of different subjects. I think it's important not to scare children when you're talking about the end of the world is nigh. We can't sell it to them like that, but we turn it around and talk to them about it in terms of the positives and the hope and the things that we can do to change things. Certainly children really already know about switching off lights and recycling paper and not throwing plastic water bottles in the ocean, but so they're naturally ready for the next step of the learning. And I think that's our job, to educate them that way. So I'm sure you would agree that they are ready for that, and they have much more resilience to it, and it's being talked about all the time. So if we can talk to them about it in terms of positives, they're the people that will make the difference. I don't know if you have anything to add.
I was just going to add, for us around food, most of our kitchens have zero waste, so we use everything. It's a bit like the same. We have the same sort of ethos. So, for example, they'd have a day where they get pasta with broccoli stems. So the day before they'd get, say, fish and broccoli. The day after they get the broccoli stems, and they're aware of this as well. It's really important that what they do in the kitchen is actually told to them. A lot of the schools that we work with, they put bowls of sharing food in the middle of the tables, and that's also an educational piece as well. So if they would have had a vegetable the day before, then it gets pickled, and that gets put on the table, and the kids are taught pickling and fermenting.
And composting.
A lot of schools, the dining hall would have quite a lot of waste most of the time. So we try and manage that as well. We manage it, and we teach kids that goes to a compost. We have some schools have this machine called the Riden, which is really funny because I was at a school yesterday and they were like, we want to get rid of it. No child is going to turn. Oh. It's basically a manual composter, and each kid does it for a minute, and then there's no way you can convince them that it's a really fun thing to do over again. But yeah, I'll give. They want to get rid of it.
Sarah, do you have anything? I think we need to round up.
Yes, I was just going to say very quickly that, same as what George was saying, like, it's no use just doing complete doom and gloom. What we try, like, we've kind of taken it, like, back a step, that we kind of believe that all of the problems in the world, including climate change, come down to this, like, fundamental disillusion that we're not connected. And if you can get young people to feel their connection to the land, the world around them, other people, then they can feel like they can have an impact and they can start to make change. So we really start from that point of view of just being like, you know, if you compost this and really small steps, and then before you even try to get them to connect to climate change, because again, a lot of our kids, we hear them say all the time, there's nothing I can do about it. Like, you know, they're just, and they don't feel like they're connected to it, a lot of us have that. Sometimes it's very easy to switch off, so we kind of take it almost more back to the fundamentals of just getting them to feel their place in the world. And that's why we use this agroecological framework, because a lot of that is about that, of just, we kind of explain everything as a circle, and everything is just these interconnected circles. And if you can tell one person, you can convince another student at school, they can tell 3 people, they can tell their family, they can join the box scheme, blah, 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 and then make it positive in that way. And that sounds great that you're having all those kids and loving it.
Yes. We're over time now. So thank you all very much, and thank you for all your questions. I think that maybe the main takeaway is just ask for help. I'll come up and ask more questions to these incredible people now, and just get the ball rolling however you can go. So yeah, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.